现在听我讲话，我是来送雅雅的，她想要回归中共国，我们在帮她回归中共国，对不对？
Go home. Protesters send a message to a Chinese influencer accused of calling for cross-strait unification by force, who is now pleading to stay in Taiwan.
A new type of hybrid warfare which conducted by the Beijing.
Chinese boats continue to test Taiwan's maritime boundaries.
I know nothing about it. You're saying that they had what?
Controversy in Washington after a journalist gains access to top-secret military plans in an unsecured app. Plus, thousands of supporters of former Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte gather in The Hague to protest his arrest. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao. A Chinese influencer who has been ordered to leave Taiwan before midnight on Wednesday has protested the decision in front of the Interior Ministry, where she was greeted by around 100 counter-protesters telling her to go home. Cadence Quaranta reports.
Controversy and anger spilling over onto the streets of Taipei as a Chinese influencer known as Yaya protests the Taiwanese government's decision to revoke her marriage-based residency permit over controversial videos she posted on social media. Waiting for her there are around 100 counter-protesters who shout for her to go back to China.
Go back to China! Go back to China! Bye bye!
In her videos, immigration officials say Yaya advocated for the unification of Taiwan and China by force. By doing so, officials said she broke the law by threatening Taiwan's national security and social stability, and have ordered her to leave Taiwan by midnight on Wednesday. But just hours before that deadline, the influencer maintained she never made those kinds of statements.
你们大家都说，包括行政单位都在说我是鼓吹武统，因为这个言论，所以要把我驱离台湾。那我呢，一直在自己的影片中，并没有找到我鼓吹武统的影片。总之，我是非常不希望发生战争。我主张的是和平统一。
In his first public appearance, Yaya's Taiwanese husband joined her in front of the Ministry of Interior, which oversees immigration matters, asking the government to reverse its decision.
我真的衷心要求内政部暂停对我太太雅雅的驱离处分，你一定要留给我们家庭，不能直接的这样子破裂。
But only meters away, counter-protesters upset with Yaya's videos tried to break past barriers to get to her, clashing with police.
你现在听我讲话，我是来送雅雅的，我们是战友哎，她想要回归中共国，我们在帮她回归中共国，对不对？对。为什么我们不能过去？为什么？
今天你是一个拿居留证的人，就表示你可能是我们台湾的客人。那你想想看，如果今天你好心邀请一个客人到你们家做客。 结果这个客人居然说我要带我家里面的人一起来打你，可不可以啊？那一定不受欢迎的嘛。那不受欢迎，我们把他赶出去而已啊。
The scene goes to show just how controversial this case has become in Taiwan. Among the protesters, there was even one from China.
中国有多差，他心里清楚，所以他不敢回去，他不想回去，他想占台湾的资源，想占台湾的好。
Some have questioned the decision on the basis of free speech, but officials have hit back, maintaining that Yaya's comments have harmed Taiwan's national security and are not within the bounds of protected speech.
大家可以看到，从法律战、舆论战跟心理战，它这个呢可以说是三战齐发。不管是行政单位，或是我们的司法单位，都已经做出最后的一个裁示，希望雅雅能够按照我们原来的行政处分来做处理。
The National Immigration Agency told TaiwanPlus earlier today that if Yaya does not leave before the deadline, they will act in accordance with the law and forcibly deport her. Chris Ma, Fu Hua Hung, Pichi Zhuang, and Cadence Quaranta for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's Coast Guard is having to deal with a large number of Chinese vessels that are repeatedly trespassing in waters around the country. The boats range from small fishing vessels to larger oil barges, and there are no signs the intrusions are slowing down. John Van Trieste has more.
Off Taiwan's Penghu Islands, a Chinese fishing boat rocks through choppy waves, its crew hunting for squid. It doesn't have permission to be here, and some local fishermen will later claim its crew is aggressive, stealing the catch and even the fishing gear from other boats it comes across. By the time the Coast Guard arrives, though, this tiny vessel has disappeared out to sea.
抵达通报海域后，仅发现本国籍船只，经询问现场作业渔船均回复未发现陆籍小型快艇。本队将持续针对可疑快艇深入追查。
But this wasn't the only Chinese trespasser in Taiwan's waters in recent weeks. Taiwanese fishing crews sighted 2 other Chinese boats elsewhere off the same island chain Sunday. The Coast Guard is bringing in bigger patrol ships to meet this challenge. Boats like these may not just come to fish. Some military analysts see them as a test, probing Taiwan's resolve and ability to defend its own waters.
It's a so-called Chinese type, a new type of hybrid warfare, which conducted by the Beijing. Actually, not only the so-called gray zone, and even it's involved about the maritime resources. For example, China sent their large fishing vessel even to the South Pacific, close to the Argentina.
And while sometimes only 1 or 2 boats may be involved, there are also cases of more sophisticated intrusions elsewhere. In February, a team of 6 motherships released 29 smaller fishing boats into waters Taiwan has designated as a marine national park, a place where no fishing is allowed. The Coast Guard reports that often these boats fly no flag and have no name or home port painted on the side. It's also common practice to turn off signaling that would let the Coast Guard know they're there.
12海里内，巡防艇的雷达一定会侦测得到，侦测到目标是不是大陆渔船，我们要用肉眼去判别。大陆渔船会在船旁边加装铁棍，阻挡我们的船登检。
Not all Chinese boats are getting away, though. On Sunday, the Coast Guard seized this Chinese oil barge, which it suspects was helping other Chinese boats refuel off Taiwan's northwest coast. The 6 crew members had no ID. It expects to sort out punishments in the next 3 months.
前往永安外海西北20海里处查处可疑目标时，发现一艘无船名大陆船舶。那本队同仁立即将其带返台北港查处。
Chinese social media has taken an interest in these incidents, but the Coast Guard says reports it's abused Chinese crews are untrue. It says it will continue to uphold Taiwan's sovereignty in its waters, but the recent wave of unidentified Chinese boats means it has a lot of work to do. Alex Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Prosecutors in Hualien County are looking into reports of voter intimidation linked to Taiwan's mass recall movement. They've carried out several searches, including at local government offices, and questioned around a dozen people. This comes after people said they were approached by government officials after they signed a petition to recall opposition Kuomintang caucus whip Fu Kunqi. Fu represents Hualien as legislator and was previously its county chief. A stunning breach of military intelligence. That's how U.S. Democrats are describing a security oversight by top Republican officials that allowed a journalist access to confidential military plans. Reese Ayers reports.
Deny.
Nobody was texting war plans.
Plead ignorance.
I know nothing about it. You're saying that they had what?
Evaluate.
We have taken a step back.
A spectrum of responses from US President Donald Trump's administration after reports that a journalist was given access to a group chat that the nation's highest national security officials were using to plan military action. Writing in The Atlantic, editor-in-chief Jeffrey Goldberg said he was mistakenly added into a group on the messaging app Signal earlier in the month. Among its members, Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, the latter apparently texting details of an attack in Yemen 2 hours before bombs began exploding. part of Trump's ongoing campaign against Houthi rebels over the group's attacks against cargo ships in the Red Sea. But despite the evidence, including screenshots from Goldberg, Hegseth has been quick to try and discredit his claims.
You're talking about a deceitful and highly discredited so-called journalist who's made a profession of peddling hoaxes time and time again.
The oversight has ignited a storm of criticism from across the political spectrum, with top Democrats demanding a full investigation into the blunder and calling out the officials involved for gross incompetence.
Though I will note that the Secretary of Defense, who was on that chain, has got to be the most unqualified person ever to lead the Pentagon in American history.
Signal, the commercial messaging app hosting the group chat, has not been approved by the US government for sharing sensitive information. If found to have taken place outside of secure channels, the conversation could violate the Espionage Act. And despite the controversy, the White House has been celebrating the attacks on the Houthis as highly successful and effective, paying little mind to what Democrats are calling the most stunning breach of military intelligence. John Su and Rees for TaiwanPlus.
For more on how the Trump administration accidentally shared sensitive military plans with a journalist, Alec McDonald spoke to Alan Liska, intelligence analyst at Recorded Future.
This story really starts with government officials using a commercial app opposed to a secure government-developed app. What are the risks that these officials are taking when they're using Signal to communicate what is perceptively classified information?
So there are a few things that are concerning with this. One is that we don't know if this was on government-issued devices or personal devices. And obviously, your personal devices are much more susceptible to attacks, and every person who was on that text chain is a target. So even if Signal isn't compromised, their personal devices could be, and everything that's on those devices could be flowing off into into enemy hands. But the other thing is, at least in the U.S., there are records requirements that all military operations have to follow, and Signal is, as secure as Signal is, it doesn't meet the demands of those record requirements. So, that means that conversations are in place that aren't necessarily going to be recorded the way they should. And that information, the information that's being shared, is government property. So just like any other military operation, the information being shared there is government property, and now there's no record of what was being said or why decisions were made.
So have there been incidences of other information that, while still sensitive, is lower level, but it's still leaked on these messaging apps such as WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, apps that would not be considered secure for sensitive information communication?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, even inadvertently, we've seen the stories repeatedly about how you can track secret military bases by people going running with their fitness watches and uploading the information from there, from those watches to the cloud, and then suddenly that's available for everybody to see. So there are all kinds of things that happen, and it shouldn't, but it definitely happens. And sometimes in a battlefield or in an emergency situation, you don't have any choice to do this.
So in the current cyber warfare environment, we're seeing more advanced attacks, and like you said, each person on this communications chain has a device that could potentially be at risk. What steps do, say, Taiwanese or U.S. officials need to take to ensure that these mistakes don't happen again and that sensitive information stays secure?
So communication should always be done on authorized government devices, and those government devices should be constantly going through audits, looking for malware, looking for intrusions, looking for the types of access that we worry about. So that's the first thing. Again, sometimes that's not going to be the case. There are exceptions where you may have to use your personal device in a field or whatever. And in cases like that, there should be strict guidelines from government offices about how and when that can be used and what level of information can be shared. We never want to disrupt military operations when, or slow them down because of regulations, but we always have to make sure you're being secure. It doesn't do you any good if you feel like you have to use your personal device in the battlefield and you're just sharing everything that you're sending to other people in the field with an enemy combatant. And that could literally be happening in any of these cases.
That was Alan Liska, intelligence analyst at Recorded Future. Japan has launched a permanent military headquarters to coordinate its defense forces and respond to emergencies, including a conflict over Taiwan. Japanese defense officials say more than 200 personnel will work for the new Joint Operations Command. Tokyo says it's concerned about what it calls a changing security environment. Many observers say this is a significant reform in the country's self-defense forces. Taiwan's exports outlook remains strong for its lucrative chips and electronics despite looming U.S. tariffs. U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff policy has shaken global markets, but leading Taipei economic think tank TIER says Taiwan should still be able to hit its 3% growth target for the year. Washington is set to unveil reciprocal tariffs plans next week, targeting countries that run trade surpluses with the U.S., which includes Taiwan. Trump has also suggested a separate tariff on imported chips.
那现在就是说，因为川普的政策是说，到底是对等关税，还是贸易顺差，还是贸易量大的，这个都没有讲清楚部分。如果真的是就字面上来讲对等关税的话，理论上半导体跟伺服器那个是不能课税的。
TIER says Taiwan's simple tariff rate is a little higher than the U.S.'s, but its weighted tariff of 1.6 is in fact lower than Washington's. Coming up after the break, a newly passed military law leads to a violent clash with police in Indonesia. We bring you stories from Taiwan.
Every day of the week.
Our reporters travel the nation.
Exploring the issues that matter to you.
News from here in Taiwan and around the world.
What's up, Taiwan? On TaiwanPlus. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, download the TaiwanPlus app.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Protesters clashed with police in East Java over Indonesia's newly passed military law. Around 1,000 students gathered outside a Surabaya government building, hurling rocks and sticks at police before authorities dispersed the crowds with water cannons. Dozens of protesters were detained. Activists have taken to the streets across the country for almost a week since controversial amendments were passed, allowing military personnel to take a bigger role in the government. Protesters say the law threatens Indonesia's democracy and could lead to abuse of power, human rights violations, and a lack of political liability for military personnel.
Yang pertama, tolak revisi UU TNI. Yang kedua, tolak perluasan fungsi TNI dalam ranah sipil. Yang ketiga, tolak perluasan fungsi TNI, terutama dalam ranah siber. Yang keempat, bubarkan komando teritorial. Yang kelima, tarik seluruh militer dari tanah Papua. Yang keenam, kembalikan militer ke barak.
The amendments allow military officers to take government positions without first leaving the armed forces. Thousands of Filipinos have gathered at The Hague calling for the release of former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte, who is facing charges of crimes against humanity for his war on drugs. While his arrest is bringing closure to families of drug war victims, supporters of Duterte have accused the current Philippine government of political persecution. Gino Lopez reports.
It's been 7 years since a lawn worker, Christine Pascual, lost her son, Joshua. The 17-year-old was shot dead in a police operation during former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte's so-called war on drugs. One of thousands killed in the brutal anti-drug campaign. Like many other victims' families, Pascual has struggled for justice. And she says she feels little relief at the former strongman's recent arrest.
Hindi ganun kahit nakulong na siya, hindi pa rin ganun ka nawawala. Parang andun pa rin yung uluha, hindi mo maalis sa katawan mo. Mamamatay kang nandun na yung sakit na hindi na maibabawi na anumang paraan.
Duterte was arrested in Manila to face charges of crimes against humanity at the International Criminal Court in The Hague. This comes as he and his successor, current President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., had a fallout. In what's seen as a power struggle between the country's two most influential political dynasties. Human rights activists have welcomed Duterte's arrest. But the controversial leader remains a popular figure, with thousands of overseas Filipinos gathering where he is detained in The Hague to call for his release, accusing the Marcos administration of politically persecuting Duterte. His daughter Sara, the Philippines' current vice president, has also been in town, overseeing her father's legal defense and questioning his arrest.
He's very confident about the legal arguments. He's very confident about that what they did was wrong, and there is no case to begin with.
Before his arrest at the Manila airport, Duterte was meeting supporters in Hong Kong. His presence in the city prompting speculation that he was there to seek asylum from China, a claim the Beijing government is now refuting.
中方从未收到所谓杜特尔特前总统及其家人向中国政府寻求庇护的申请。
Back at The Hague, security has been tightened around the ICC perimeter as Duterte's supporters continue to stake out the court's facilities. For them, the trial is a travesty. But for Pascual, it may just be the start of healing. Kama Shu and Gino Lopez for TaiwanPlus.
Tens of thousands of protesters have rallied across Turkey for a sixth day over the jailing of Istanbul's mayor. Ekrem İmamoğlu is awaiting trial on corruption charges which the country's main opposition party says are unfounded. İmamoğlu is President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's main political rival. Protesters say the allegations against him are politically motivated.
Bak Erdoğan, diyordun ki ilk gün olur, ikinci gün durulur, üçüncü gün unutulur. Bir hafta oldu, ne diyor gençler? Bu daha başlangıç, mücadele devam.
President Erdogan has called the protests a movement of violence. The UN is warning that 6.3 million people could die from AIDS over 4 years if U.S. foreign aid isn't restored. The agency leading the global response to HIV says that recent cuts to USAID could result in 2,000 new infections a day. U.S. President Donald Trump's administration has paused hundreds of millions of U.S. dollars in foreign aid for 90 days. The UN also predicts a tenfold increase in HIV-related deaths due to treatment delays and clinic closures. A growing number of Formosan sika deer are being spotted in southern Taiwan, causing problems for the local ecosystem. Our reporter Sandy Chi explains.
A sign of successful conservation. Thousands of Formosan sika deer roaming in Kenting National Park in southern Taiwan. In only a few decades, the park's sika deer population has grown from just 22 in 1980 to approximately 3,800 in 2024. The deer were introduced to the area from Taipei Zoo as part of a long-term rewilding program. However, the success has come at a cost, taking a significant toll on the local ecology. The sika deer conservation area includes the Kenting Uplifted Coral Reef Nature Reserve, a unique environment established in 1995. It serves as a vital habitat for various tree species, including banyan trees with aerial roots, tropical rainforests, and monsoon forests.
那第一次调查的时候，那时候我们知道整个森林10公顷里面有42000多棵树，然后一直到2018年的时候，就剩下25000多棵。那新增样目的话，变化在这个部分我们看的是比较心惊胆跳的哈。梅花鹿主要是它主要影响，还有少量其他的事件影响的。
To help the trees recover and continue with the deer conservation, fences were installed in the park. However, the area faces challenges related to funding and maintenance. To control the sika deer population, contraceptive vaccines are another option. But this approach also comes with its own obstacles.
它的出生季过后呢，在春天，然后一直到下一个繁殖季开始，一个生殖季开始就是秋天，这短短的大概半年的时间，你要在整个族群当中70%、80% 的鹿都能够达到。
Conservation is an ongoing challenge. Even when successful, experts say it still requires more planning and collaboration to safeguard both wildlife species and ecosystems, maintaining the balance of nature. Ryan Wu and Sandy Chi for TaiwanPlus.
And thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Finally today, check out this egg hunting event in London where members of the public can collect eggs using an app and win prizes as part of a public art exhibition. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.